Annabelle, a horror film that takes place in the Conjuring universe and focuses on the story of the now infamous doll that turned out to be possessed, and just like the Conjuring, the real story of this doll is much more sinister than we see on our screens. So firstly, I'm going to make my most obvious point. No, the doll doesn't look the same as it does in the films. In real life, the doll looks like any old Raggedy Ann doll that kids would have had at the time. For obvious reasons, the filmmakers had to make the thing look like it was made by Satan himself. But like any horror film based on real life, it's never going to be 100% accurate. Now that's out of the way, we can move on to the real story of Annabelle, starting with her owner. So the doll was given to a student nurse called Donna as a gift from her mother, who had found the doll in a second-hand store. Donna was living with her friend Angie at the time, and they both loved the doll at first, but Annabelle quickly became a source of fear for both of the women. It all started with subtle movements from the doll, like finding her on the floor instead of in a chair, but the girls thought maybe she'd just fallen. Soon after this though, her movement had become less subtle, changing rooms, or even waiting outside Angie's bedroom door at some points. This prompted a close friend, named Lou, to start referring to the doll as possessed, and saying it needed to be disposed of. However, even after everything, this didn't sit right with Donna and Angie. They still believed it could have just been them forgetting they'd moved her. This story then quickly became a whole lot more sinister, when the girls had started to find small notes around their apartment, written on parchment paper, something neither of them had ever owned or used. The notes said things such as, "Help us," or "Help Lou," which of course began to frighten the two girls. The final straw, however, was when literal blood was found on the doll. They returned to their apartment one day, and the girls stated it seemed like the blood was coming from Annabelle herself, and decided they need to contact somebody that could help. The first medium arrived and told the girls a story about the land their apartment was built on, saying that it used to be fields, where a 7-year-old girl was found dead a few years prior to the building development. Apparently, the girl's spirit had become fond of the doll when it arrived, and she had attached herself to it and was using Annabelle as a conduit to communicate. Because Donna and Angie were two nice girls, they felt sorry for the girl who had died there, so they decided to keep the doll, which turned out to be a huge mistake, of course. One day, not long after the medium had been, Angie and Lou were spending some alone time in the apartment, when they heard some movement in Donna's room, who of course wasn't there at the time. Lou decided to take a look and make sure nobody had broken in, but when he opened the door, all he saw was Annabelle in the room, sitting in a chair rather than on the bed where she was left. He walked towards the doll and felt a sudden rush of dread fill his body. Then a terrible pain struck him on his chest. As he looked in the mirror to check it out, he realised there were a set of claw marks across his chest, almost as though someone had roughly scratched him as he stood in the room. He knew it was Annabelle's doing. This incident prompted the girls to get in contact with the paranormal dream team, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who came to the apartment accompanied by a priest and finally deciphered what was going on with the doll. It turned out the spirit attached to the doll was in fact demonic, and its goal was to take control over Donna's soul. They decided to take the doll with them, and Donna and Angie were finally safe. Unfortunately for Ed and Lorraine, the doll continued to cause havoc in their own home, moving around rooms, even at one point levitating above Ed's desk. Worst of all, the priest visited and told Annabelle she couldn't hurt him as she was just a doll. This was a big mistake. On his way home, he ended up in a terrible car accident when his brakes failed and the car was written off. He survived, but not without some pretty serious injuries. After this incident, Annabelle was locked up inside a cabinet with a warning on the front saying not to open. This is where she still resides to this day. So that's that, the full true story of Annabelle. Quite different to what you see in the films. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you want more paranormal content, turn notifications on. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next video.